daylight in the swamp. Let's get going.
So we're going to the big oak hill?
Yep.
I am. Anyway, I'm spending the day there.
It's fall in Ontario, and the hunters are heading out. They're taking part in an ancient ritual, but they don't have to. If it's food they want, there are plenty of supermarkets. So why are these hunters doing this? They can all afford to buy groceries, and it will be cheaper than hunting. Who are these people, and why do they cling to the ritual of hunting?
Three members here, and we shot 7 birds total. And if we had stayed out, we could have shot a lot of birds, but it was just not, that wasn't the issue. It was being here opening day and having fun. Toot swimming in the mud.
Way back.
Maybe hunters hunt because there's more to it than just meat.
It's a time to be in the wilderness, just thoroughly enjoy every aspect of it. And if we are lucky enough to get game, fine. But our luck hasn't been that great, and we keep coming back, so I guess there's something more to it than just getting the game.
The hunt is one part, the kill is one part, the camaraderie is the other part. There's so many different areas here, all brought into 1 week. We come here to do things.
Stone Age man was the first to use tools to begin hunting in groups. That was 2 million years ago. Hunting is how we learned to work together. It was the beginning of civilization.
And somebody north of it, north of Teardrop Lake. Yeah, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's all the standards, 5 standards because of Craig.
Right there, that big knob.
Oh, here?
Yeah.
And where were they going?
Straight south.
That was the one that, that Gary tagged. It was right in there.
Working together, planning, and the rituals throughout the hunt camps across the province include the oldest bond between humans, sharing food.
We put salt and pepper in it. Leave enough room for the butter. We gotta have the butter.
Tonight we're gonna have grouse. Tomorrow night we're gonna have moose backstrap from the moose that we got 2 weeks ago. We'll have venison from last year's deer. We're not losing weight here, is what I'm trying to say.
So the trout will be placed like that over the lengthwise.
We ask that you bless the roast that we received from last year's hunt.
Isn't that amazing? Look at that. Wow. There's only a couple of places.
There's not too many places.
Wow. This is gourmet dining in a tent.
Having read tonight.
I think about this
great
all year.
The nice thing I like about hunting is I look at that as a positive thing for the North because it gets people from the South up here and gives them an opportunity to see what we have in our province.
In Ontario, hunters have a lot of ground to cover. From the Great Lakes and U.S. border, Ontario stretches north to Hudson Bay, polar bear country. Ontario is bigger than Texas and Oklahoma. It contains 250,000 lakes. But most Ontarians live in the South in cities and towns. Most have lost the old connection with the land. Support for hunting has declined. Ontario's hunters want to reverse that. They've recognized the need to look at themselves, to see where change is needed. They are reaching out to young people, women, and other groups. They're working hard to improve hunter safety and ethics. Ontario hunters are working toward a future in which everyone realizes hunting is more than 90% conservation and enjoying nature, and less than 10% harvesting. And hunters are working hard on conservation. Because of those efforts, wildlife is abundant. Ontario is home to more than 70 species of mammals, including deer, moose, black bear, elk, and caribou. Within 100 miles to the north of Toronto, one of North America's larger urban areas, there are sustainable populations of wolves. The Ministry of Natural Resources manages Ontario's forests, fish, and wildlife, with the help and advice of resource users. It's a big job. "87% of Ontario is government land. Much of it is forested. Across the northern half of Ontario, there are no roads. Travel is by air or water. But from north to south, there's a long tradition of hunting and trapping. On Bearskin Lake, 400 miles north of Lake Superior, Aboriginal hunters hunt the same areas their ancestors hunted hundreds of years ago. Today they guide visiting hunters and then hunt and share their limit with the community. At the opposite end of the province, on Lake Erie near the Long Point Marshes, the members of the Turkey Point Company are also hunting waterfowl. They've been doing it since 1885. Many of the members are Americans. Their grandfathers helped found the club and held on through droughts, depressions, and wars. They invested money in water control, tree belts, and water plants. Charles Lindbergh was a guest at Turkey Point, along with Eleanor Roosevelt. The members also helped found Ducks Unlimited Canada in 1937. In Ontario, hunters are major supporters and raise $3 million annually to help DU Canada improve wildlife habitat. Hunters work on and fund all kinds of wildlife projects, including hunting heritage festivals in southern Ontario. Some clubs at the festival support research.
There's a realization now that young people are essential. And I think a lot of private clubs and what we see here today, when you look at the large number of young people here today, this is the type of, I guess, activities that will introduce people to the outdoors, particularly young people. And if you note, this is all, or almost all, instigated by hunting or fishing, or certainly that type of organization.
It's just a beautiful experience because we have a chance to be quiet in the wilderness, to walk around and see nature, see all aspects of it.
This year I took my dad out on one day. It was blizzarding and we were out way the heck up on these hills, and I'm like, we got to find these deer. They got to be out there somewhere. But it was just to be out there, you know, and be, I don't know, that was probably one of the best days hunting, and I didn't even see a deer.
Every day there's something to see, and at night around the fire, the hunters tell their stories.
Like we're out early in the morning at daybreak, and he said he could see this thing flying through the trees and stick to the side of a tree and then run up and take off and glide away again.
You feel like you're in a desert. It's absolutely desolate, and then all of a sudden a whiskey jack will come along if you're eating a sandwich, and he'll literally land beside you just waiting for a morsel to fall to the ground. Oh, yeah. You know, I've even actually had them land in my hand.
Humans began settling down to plant crops 11,000 years ago, but we've been hunting for 2 million years. Maybe that's why it just feels right to be outdoors on the trail. You could be hiking, or you could be hunting.
The enjoyment of being in nature, it's a quiet, peaceful time, and we can enjoy it with each other as well as being on the field alone.
And you always feel really good when you go back home. Whether you come back with meat or not, you feel really great.
Yeah. One of the fellows that comes here has been a full-time gunsmith, and he makes these reproduction firearms, and some of us are hunting with us and with those, and some are hunting with firearms that they built themselves. The cabin's a cabin I tore down and rebuilt, and we've tried to keep it pretty rustic. No electricity, no hydro, no telephone, no cell phones, no computers, so You're kind of turning the clock back a little bit, or at least trying to keep it steady.
If hunting is the recreation of history, much of that history is about us. It's the story of families and the hunts that brought them together. It's the celebration of unforgettable times.
My father said, well, son, I think it's time you started to learn to hunt. He was a sharpshooter.
My daddy taught me how to duck hunt when I was 8 years old. I still use his shotgun. I take it out every year and shoot one bird with his gun.
I carried a little toy gun around and followed my dad. That was the greatest thing I could do, was to follow him when we were squirrel hunting.
Today, the tradition lives on. Fathers and friends and young hunters in a place where the generations come together.
This is a good spot because we're fairly covered in here, but we can see. I just sort of put my finger over my nose.
How to call a moose. It's just one of many, many skills a young hunter needs to be successful. Hunting safety. The public is concerned, and so are hunters. In the 1950s, volunteers began teaching hunter education. In 1961, the Ontario government made hunter education mandatory. And since then, more than 1 million hunters have learned about the safe handling of firearms and hunter ethics.
Put your shell in and close the action on it.
And I can remember trying to convince kids or whatever, is that when if you ever have a hunting accident, it's not like somebody else is going to get hurt. It's going to be your brother, your father, your son, your daughter, your wife. You know, that's the critical thing. And I just, personally, I don't hunt with people that are not safe.
I know all of the people I hunt with. I've known them for years, and there would be more like an extended family. And just like you would respect and trust someone in your family, you'd respect and trust your hunting companions as well.
You know, there's no shot at any animal that takes precedent over the fact that you've got 3 or 4 of your buddies out here too, so you have to know where they are all the time.
Statistically, hunting is about the safest sport to be engaged in. A whole lot safer than snowmobiling, or skiing, or boating, or driving a car, or crossing the street.
In 1960, in Ontario, the year before hunter education began, out of 164,000 hunters, there were 36 hunting fatalities. In 1999, with 450,000 hunters in Ontario, not counting non-resident hunters, there were no fatalities. Today, experienced hunters are training novice hunters about bush skills, safety, and ethics. And that includes women who are first-time hunters or want to improve their skills. Becoming an Outdoors Woman workshops began in the Midwest, but are spreading across North America.
We're checking to see if their firearms are loaded, and you check down the breech and you can see that it's not loaded. I could tell these guys were good guys to start off with anyway.
Fair play. It's what all good hunters practice. There's a right way and a wrong way to treat wildlife and to hunt.
I always like to think that what you're hunting has the ability to escape. That is, if you don't fair chase. If that doesn't happen, it's not hunting.
To appreciate all the different aspects of hunting, you have to have a respect for the animal that will allow you to leave it in the forest and actually not take an animal. I think you have to have that respect in order to actually appreciate all the whole big picture of hunting.
Our ancestors especially used to be so thankful when they get the food from the wilderness, and thank the Great Spirit for the food, and also thanks the spirit of the animal that gives its life for us.
You know, the way it started here years and years ago with these marshes, this marsh and Long Point Marsh, and they were the first to have hunting rules. Long before it was provincial rule, before it was a government rule, they had their own company rules that you didn't go into the marsh until 9 o'clock in the morning, and you didn't stay out after 4 o'clock in the evening, and they set the bag limits, long before the bag limits were set by the provincial government, they set their own bag limits.
We always tried to do the best and the most respectable thing in the camp, and stick to a code of ethics was always important to us. And if one of us was getting off track, the other one told us about it, so we kind of kept each other always on track.
Ethics has always been important, whether or not we've had opposition from anti-hunters or not, because if anything is to be left, and if we are to be able to continue hunting, we have to follow certain good practices, and it involves respect for the environment, respect for the animals that we hunt, respect for other hunters, respect for the efforts being made by the ministry and the government regulating hunting so that it will remain a viable sport for us.
Yeah, my father, he was a man now. He liked to hunt, he liked to fish, but don't let anything go to waste. Whatever you shoot, eat it. You know what I mean? And no waste, but don't overkill. Because he said, you got to leave enough for another generation. He says, there's always a younger generation coming. We got to think of them too.
To hunters, over-harvesting is a real concern. In the 1800s, hunters were the first to sound the alarm when commercial harvesters were killing game for profit to supply markets in the cities. Ontario's hunters were the first to ask government to end commercial shooting. More than any other group, hunters support conservation, contributing millions of dollars each year.
Myself and other hunters buy properties that could have been sold, and we maintain these properties, we hold on to these properties. These properties could have been sold. They're usually wetlands, marginal farmlands, but they could be sold for housing, they could be sold for marinas, they could be sold for a diking and farming operation.
Hunters also work with the Ontario government to protect and reintroduce species. In the 1980s, the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters urged the province to reintroduce wild turkeys. Ontario now has 20,000 wild turkeys that can be hunted in 28 locations across southern Ontario, after hunters complete a special education program. In the 1980s, Ontario hunters worked with the provincial government to airlift moose out of the forest to be loaded aboard trucks for shipment to the U.S. Ontario was helping the state of Michigan bring back moose in the Upper Peninsula. Today, Ontario hunters are proud of their latest rehabilitation efforts. In partnership with other groups, they imported elk from the West and released them in 3 locations. So far, 279 elk have been released near Sudbury, Kenora, and Bancroft. In 1993, the latest year for which figures are available, hunters in Ontario spent a total of $325 million on hunting activities. License revenues from hunters and anglers contributed more than $36 million for Ontario Fish and Wildlife Management.
For me, the hunting heritage is an inherent right that we all have. It's a tradition, it's a way of life, it's instinctive for many of us. Like, if I don't get out in the bush and for 1 year, I feel like I'm sick. Something is wrong with me. I don't feel myself.
Well, listen, talking about hunting is, it's probably one of the most very important things in my life, really, like spiritually and intellectually and physically, just all of that stuff.
It's important that the average hunter hears this and understands that people are spending some real time and effort to try and improve or regain the sort of respect that hunting had.
Oddly enough, the biggest struggle hunters may have in the future is with themselves. Hunters in Ontario recognize that times have changed. They recognize they can have all the licenses, policies, strategies, and laws in place, but without social acceptance, a social license, if you will, support for hunting will continue to decline. Getting together, planning, doing. Hunters recreate history. For almost 2 million years, humans lived their lives around hunting. Hunting determined who the leader was. The first teacher was the elder who showed a child how to hunt. The first job was hunting. The first paycheck was the meat from a kill. The first company project may have been a group of Stone Age people hunting. More importantly, the first sense that we need families and that we depend on each other may have come during the feast following a successful hunt. Long, long ago. "2 million years of hunting must have left its mark. It must have shaped human evolution. If that's true, shouldn't we try to understand this key to who we are? These are the kinds of questions hunters are asking. They can't imagine losing touch with something that important. It's just one more reason they return, year after year.